What's up, everybody? Welcome to In Love with Horror. I'm AJ.
And I'm Christy.
And y'all, this is our The Exorcism review. So the way this review is going to work, it's the first time we're really trying this out. The first portion of this review will be the non-spoiler portion. And then we'll inform y'all, but we'll switch to a spoiler portion of the review so we can talk into details about some of the things in this film. So if you haven't seen the film yet, you can watch the first half. But then after you watch the film, make sure you come back and visit this video. So with that, y'all, let's jump into talking about The Exorcism, giving you our thoughts for non-spoiler. Christy, what did you think about The Exorcism?
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty okay Exorcist film. It wasn't super great, but it wasn't like trash. So I thought it was kind of pretty average.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't even
you
talk about
you jumped right into it.
Right, yeah.
I was like, okay, overall thoughts.
Yeah, I jumped right into it. Let me take it a step back then and talk about what the film is, just in case people don't know about this film. So The Exorcism is a new, possession, supernatural film that was directed by Joshua John Miller, written by M.A. Fortin and Joshua John Miller. It stars Russell Crowe, Ryan Simpkins, Sam Worthington, and Chloe Bailey. So this is another Russell Crowe exorcism type of movie. That was a big thing with this film that, people discussed online. I was like, okay, Russell Crowe's doing another exorcist movie, you know what I'm saying?
But he actually did this one first.
Yeah, so you know a little bit about the history that this film was done quite a long time ago.
Yes.
And then the strikes happened and it kind of got shelved for a little bit.
No, it's
right?
COVID.
Oh, this is COVID related.
This is COVID related. It's been on hold for 4 years.
So it was done 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Wow.
And now I don't know how true this part is, but according to some of the reports I read, that because of the success of the Pope's Exorcist, they decided to kind of okay, let's get this back off the ground. So they did some reshoots of some parts, and then we got what we got.
Wow, that's crazy.
But yes, this was a COVID movie that they started working on, and then shut down during that, kind of fell off the rails from that point.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because honestly, you kind of, and you just gave kind of what you felt about the film.
Yes, I did.
Excuse me. To know that this film had that kind of history.
Yeah.
And it's actually way better than the Pope's Exorcist. So the fact that, it was, on hold for 4 years and did some reshoots 4 years later, 3 years later or whatever, and to still come out pretty decent in my opinion and way better than the Pope's Exorcist, I'm actually surprised. But as far as how I feel about the film, I really like this film. If you've seen our out of theater reaction, if you haven't, go check that out, because we like to literally walk out the theater and give you our fresh reactions at the we was outside the auditorium door in front of the poster, giving y'all our fresh reactions, right? Because that keeps it honest. You know what I'm saying? How'd you really feel when you came out of this? Now we had some time to digest it. Now it's that same night. And I still really like this movie. Like I said in our out of theater reaction, it had, it was very much like a deep dive into the characters, like a character study. This film isn't really super scary, because it focuses so much on the drama of the characters. So you're dealing with, Russell Crowe, who, has a troubled past. He lost his wife. He has dealt with some things and is trying to overcome them. You know what I'm saying? So the film...
I do want to point this out because you would have to read the synopsis. A lot of people don't know this, but he's not an actual exorcist. He's playing an exorcist in a movie. For some reason, some people don't realize. They didn't know that.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
I wanted to point that out. He's an actor playing on a set as an exorcist, and so his real life that he's dealing with is as a regular guy.
Oh, right, yeah, that's good to know because that was a really cool aspect of this movie, is that the movie is about a horror movie being made.
Yes,
and Russell Crowe is filling in as the priest who performs the exorcism.
Right,
but he's got all this trouble and shit going on in his real life.
And I also think the reason why I don't like this movie as much is because of the point you made, which is that it's not scary. We don't get a lot of scares in this movie. Mm-hmm. It is more of a
family psychological
drama.
Yeah.
And then on the back end, we got some scares.
Yeah. And surprisingly...
in the front and the back.
Surprisingly, that's actually why I really like this movie, because I would prefer a movie like this. It's very slow paced, but you really get invested in the character. Like I was really invested in these
I'm starting
characters.
to think you
and what was
don't like
going on.
horror.
Really? Nah, I like
I
horror.
just feel like because you really like The Watchers like a whole lot. That's
dope.
not a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
And now you really liked The Exorcism, and it lacks the horror elements for me.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously I still like horror because I really like the first Omen.
Obviously you do.
Yeah, the first Omen is up there as one of the best. I think we named that as our number one.
I'm really being funny, but it's just the fact that you was like, well, I think that's why I did like it, because it didn't have that.
Oh, right. Well, I guess let me clarify what I'm saying, right? Is like, I liked it more because it wasn't like throwaway cliche exorcism formula.
Okay, well, I get
You know
that
what I'm saying?
aspect.
That's what I mean
you
by
can
that.
still have scares and it not be cliche throwaway type of scares.
Yeah, but I feel like when you have a movie like this, that's the path they typically look at. The Pope's Exorcist. That's about as formulaic, generic as they come.
Yep.
But this movie was just so different in its concepts and its approach, dealing with more like the real life horror of things. And then obviously it slowly got into, possession and things like that. But the trauma of dealing with that, the horror aspect of that, looking at how it affects the people around you. It's just, I don't know. It really worked for me. I thought the writing was really good, like the dialogue. I thought Russell Crowe was going to phone this one in, but like, I thought he was excellent in this movie. There's a lot of moments. There's a lot of moments where I was like, damn, like, this is some good writing. He's delivering the fuck out this monologue that I like.
Okay. I do like Russell Crowe in this movie. I also like the daughter in this movie.
Yeah, Ryan Simpkins.
Ryan Simpkins, I think she did a really good job. You could tell that she just was on an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And she really wants to, help her dad. And so I did really like her character. And I did like Russell Crowe, like I said.
Yeah. And this
those
movie...
those were pretty good.
And it had don't get me wrong, like it had creepy moments. It just wasn't very many of them. Now it did still do some things that surprised me that was unexpected. We'll get into that in our spoiler review of this review. But ultimately, yeah, like I thought this was a good little film. Like I was pleasantly surprised.
Would you watch it again?
Yeah, I would actually.
Wow, I am shocked.
I would watch this again.
Christy would not watch this movie.
But because when you compare it to like just some of the most terrible movies that we've gotten, like things like Night Swim and shit, it's like this is almost like a breath of fresh air in comparison to those movies. Like to me, this movie is better than
types of movies. I don't really think you can compare this to Night Swim unless you're looking at it as a genre thing.
I'm looking at it as a movie. Like just as a movie, this is a better movie than Night Swim. You know what I'm saying? And then to me, it's still a better horror movie than Night Swim is.
I think a better comparison would be something like The First Omen or Immaculate, because these are the same types of horror movies.
No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna keep it open, because I mean you could dial it down to the subgenre. Like you could look like, oh, is this as good as other supernatural horror movies? But A Night Swim is a supernatural horror movie. It deals with a essentially like some sort of demon water shit. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, it's not faith-based. If you want to get specific, The Exorcism is a faith, Catholicism-based one, like The First Omen is, Immaculate. They're all Catholicism-based supernatural demon shit. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, this movie isn't as good as Immaculate or The First Omen, but if we look at the genre as a whole, it stands way better than stuff like Night Swim, Imaginary, Tarot. I'd rather watch this over
I
all
would
that
watch
shit.
Tarot before I would watch this again.
Nah, this I was way more invested in these characters. I didn't give a fuck about the characters in Tarot, but at least in this, you really learn about these characters and get invested in these characters. Like I was normally I'd be bored in movies where they just have a lot of like dialogue and stuff, but these characters were actually interesting. Like their relationship dynamic. You know what I'm saying? Especially because we have relatability, because we have a teenage daughter. And so like just seeing some of the relatability aspects of like parenthood, teenage rebellion, trying to get over, mistakes that you've made, you know what I'm saying? Like all that stuff. I was like, damn, like this is some deep shit. You know what I'm saying? They got real deep. And then obviously you got some of the horror aspects that play into it as it starts to evolve. But I thought this was a good little film. But obviously we're going to switch to spoilers in a second, but this overall, I think this is a good film. It's slower paced, so just be prepared for a slower paced horror movie that's more focused on the psychological aspect. And then it does, I will agree, we had this conversation before, that it kind of loses its footing towards the end when it switches more to a cliched style, but still have some surprises in there. And we'll get into that in the spoiler part that surprised me, some shit.
I'm really interested in seeing what this surprise
You'll
was.
see.
I want to make note of this, that Joshua John Miller is the director. He's also the son of John Miller, who played Father Karras in The Exorcist.
Which is super cool. Yeah.
Yes. And the exorcism portion is the most disliked part of the movie for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I actually agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
That's definitely the weakest part of the film.
Especially since it's called The Exorcism.
Yep.
And yeah, that's the worst part of this movie.
Yeah, it is the weakest part. They definitely could have done that better. But everything leading up to that, I actually really enjoyed. And there's a lot of cool moments with, they really play on the fact that a film is being made. So there's a lot of like good bits that when you know how films are made, like there's a lot of like funny aspects to it.
Yeah.
Just all around. But yeah, hey, if you haven't watched the film and you're here at this end of this portion of the review, give it a chance. See if you like it. Again, it's slower paced, so you might not like it if you don't like slower paced films. But if you like, psychological horror, family drama stuff, a movie where you can get invested in the characters, I think this is a movie that you may end up liking. It may surprise you, but I always say give a movie a chance no matter what. And I think this is one you could take a risk on. And we'll let you know when you shouldn't, right? Like shit like Imaginary Nights when we will literally tell you, do not go watch this movie. Save your money, wait for it to go on streaming. But I think this is a movie that deserves an opportunity because it may surprise you. But with that, we'll switch over to our spoiler side of this review. So this is now your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched the film, you don't want to be spoiled, pause the video of the podcast here and then come back after you watch the film. And then you can follow along with us as we dive into the nitty-gritty details of the things we liked and the things we didn't like, the things that surprised us, etc. So with that, your final spoiler warning, let's go ahead and jump into the spoiler part of the review. All right, so let's jump into the spoiler section of the review, y'all. So what's to start from the top? The opening scene, that's something we both agree that we really liked.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, in the opening scene, we're on set, and there's another guy who is currently playing Father Arlington. I think that's what his name is or something like that.
That's the role. Yep.
And he's like going through the house and not pretending, but he's acting out his part, trying to practice, but he's alone and it's mostly dark. And so when he gets up the stairs in this house, he's reading his lines and then something happens. He gets like the door slams and then something like grabs him by the neck and basically unalives him. And so because of his death, they had to replace his role. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where Russell Crowe's character comes into play. He's like practicing his lines and his daughter comes home. She's been away at school. I think it's like a Catholic school, if I'm not mistaken, because he said like Saint something.
It could be.
I think it was.
I wasn't sure. Yep.
And she got kicked out of school for putting paint on the principal's car because her guidance counselor married a woman and she fired her. And so she was kind of like protesting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she got sent home, and so you can tell that there's a strained relationship between Russell Crowe's character Tony and his daughter.
Yep. So
we learned throughout the movie that he was an addict, and his wife passed away from cancer, and so she was left with him as her sole parent, and he was non-existent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He did go to rehab, but it has only been a year since he's been out of rehab. But you can tell he's got, working to get his life together, right? So this
Yep.
role is like an opportunity for him. And he does say later that he wants to make his daughter proud.
Yep.
And we also get him giving a confession. And he's kind of like, revealing this to us. This is how we kind of learn all this information that I just gave you during his confession.
Which is cool. That's a great scene. I would love that scene.
And so his daughter, when she's first in the beginning of the movie, so she has her own character arc, right? Like, so in the beginning, she's very like keeping the distance, clear boundaries between her and her dad. So she calls him Tony. She doesn't call him dad. And when he's trying to tell her something, she's walking away, closing the door. So she's got that kind of like, horror movie, rebel kid.
Yep.
Trope type thing going on.
She was a lot. So she was doing a lot. I was like, damn.
She was doing a lot.
A whole lot. Yep.
And then, not going through the whole movie, he does eventually go to read for the role.
Yep.
And
there was like some really cool scenes between him and the daughter where she was like trying to help him with the script.
It was cute.
Yeah, it was like really good like little detailed moments between them as you learn more about these characters. I thought that was dope.
Right. And while he's reading for the role, he kind of like falters a little bit because apparently he's on medication. I think that's supposed to help with his addictions and stuff like that. And so he thinks that the medication is causing his like memory issues and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so he can't really remember the lines very well. But anyways, he kind of like messes up a little bit. But the director of the film is kind of like trying to help him. He's like trying to help him get the job.
Yep.
But in a really like weird way. Because I'm assuming Tony is kind of like a well-known actor at some point in time.
Yep.
Because he seems to know all of his history. And so what he kind of does is try to break down Tony's defenses, I guess, to help him, reveal more of himself and give him a better audition chance. So he actually gets a close-up of him giving the mass. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what kind of like helps solidify him.
Yep.
So he gets the role.
Yep.
They're having a party. And Chloe Bailey is playing an actress. She's in the movie as well.
Yep.
But she's younger, so she's closer to Lee's age. What's her name, Lee?
Yeah.
Yes. And so they end up in her room together. We don't know why Chloe's in her room crying, but she is.
Yeah, she was on the phone, but we don't really get to tell exactly what was going on.
Her character name is Blake. So Blake is in her room crying, and Lee comes in and kind of like talks to her. Now, Lee is also a writer. She writes screenplays.
Yep.
She's a screenwriter. And so she like read one of her plays or whatever. But they seem to have like a moment. At first, I'm reading it as like, oh, they're trying to be kind of coy or like friendly. But AJ called. He's like,
I was like, nah, they're giving each other eyes.
They're giving each other eyes.
There's more there. Yeah.
There definitely is more there. So they kind of like develop their own sort of like relationship throughout the movie as well. Because Lee is, when Tony gets a job, he brings her on as a production assistant. Because now she's kicked out of school, she needs something to do. So she's basically there on set all the time. So they get to kind of like develop a friendship, the two of them.
Yep.
Also with that, Lee is front row and center to everything that happens to her dad in his own like progression over time. And I'm not really sure, because I don't think we get an answer to this question, is how you get affected by this demonic entity.
Yes, that's something they didn't explain. Even how the set was haunted, I think it's just assumed that since it's a horror movie. But the line that they kind of gave, and that is a line that Chloe Bailey gave, where she said something about, you saw she was getting cleansed with sage before she went on stage to perform. And she made the comment of like, don't you know the history of like, when you're making these like demonic movies, all the shit that happens. So I think they were just hinting at like,
they don't really know
like
why either.
Hinting at like haunted productions. When you think about, the person who directed and his father being, a priest in the original Exorcist, that movie had rumors of being like haunted sets and stuff like that. So I'm sure that had partial influence on the writing of this.
Oh yeah,
script.
I'm sure.
So to use the trope of like sets of these horror movies being haunted is kind of like the idea behind, it's just a haunted set,
Right. Now the director is being played by Adam Goldberg. If you know him from other movies, he's kind of like an unserious person. So seeing him in this role was kind of weird. But he's trying to make a good movie. And I don't think he really cares about anything else. And so like when you see his interactions with Tony throughout him like playing his character, he's always like trying to nitpick at his deepest, darkest secrets. You know what I'm saying? Like he's knows he was
that shit out of
an alcoholic. He knows his wife died from cancer. You know, he knows what happened to him when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for Tony's character, right? So he has a lot of trauma. Starting with something that happened to him when he was an altar boy, when he was 12 years old.
Yep.
And so he kind of like uses those things to kind of fuel his character, like help him bring out what he needs out of him during the shooting days. There is a random priest guy who's on set. And so he kind of feels like these traumatic things are causing him to, you know, revert back into his old ways type of thing.
Yeah, and when she says random priest guy, it was like a actual priest that
He's
they had on set.
consulting.
As a consultant. Yep.
Right. And you can tell like he's easily triggered by him too, like at first, because he's obviously had this traumatic experience as a kid with a Catholic priest. But the guy I thought he's Father Connor, which is played by the dude from my show, Frasier. He was Niles. I loved him in that show. I took me a minute to figure out who he was. I was like, oh, it's Niles. And I said it kind of loud. It was like, shh, you're loud.
She was loud. She could be loud sometimes in theater.
I didn't mean to. But yeah, so I did kind of like his character, even though it wasn't a lot of him. And that was actually the case with quite a few of these people. Joe, which is supposed to be a really good friend of Tony's, he's barely there.
Good friend?
Yeah. He said that they were in the beginning.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
And like,
Oh, you said of the director.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
He's a very good friend. And even, I don't know, he's just really expendable. He's in and out, like maybe once or twice. You see him 2 times maybe. But he seems to know all these people, like have all these connections with everybody. I don't know. It just seems like it was a lot of like random characters.
He was like an extremely supporting character. Like,
yeah,
in the
it really
sense of,
was.
like he was not around. I'm always curious to know if there was a lot more of him in the cutting.
I wonder
floor.
that as well. That might be what it was. But anyway, so as they are shooting, things progressively get heightened, right? So like we don't know how he gets this bug, but he does, and we kind of get visuals of it in his eyes. It's like a blackness that comes into his eyes. And at one
starting to take
point,
over.
he was in the shower and you see like these black splotches on his neck and whatnot. And Lee, because, you know, he's an addict. Well, yeah, he's an addict. She thinks he's not taking his medication and it's causing him to act this way. Because even in the beginning, like he was drinking beers, and I was like, "Why is he drinking beers if he's an alcoholic?"
Yeah,
but
probably
now,
like light beers, like, you know.
Then it escalates, right? Like he starts drinking freaking Jack Daniels out the bottle.
Yep.
And
but that was after he was like way gone with the possession.
Yeah, they attribute all of these things that are happening to him, to his trauma, and to him drinking again. And you see, like the way he's portraying the character on set, right? Like he no longer seems like himself, and they're like, oh, he's a drunk or whatever. There is one particular scene where I think this was probably my favorite sequence in the movie. The director is picking at him again, trying to get him to, you know, give him what he needs.
Yep.
And he says something like, what did he say exactly about doing something to him like the priest did when he was 12 years old? He said something like really crude to him.
He said a lot of crude things, honestly.
But that one was really bad.
Yep.
It was like, I want you to do something like that priest should have did when you were 12. I don't know. It was really, really, really mean. But when he said that, his character flipped. Like you could see, like that was kind of like the last like straw. And so he goes down the steps, which was weird because he was banging on the banister. I didn't really understand the part of that. But anyways, he goes down the steps and like the lights go out and he like they come back on, and then he kind of like bends backwards. That's kind of like a clip you've seen in the trailers. You only get a piece of it, but yeah, he bends all the way back, and you hear all the bones creaking.
Yep.
And eventually, he sits down at a table and like bangs his head on the table, like
crazy.
And it was like a ton of times.
Yep. And the sound on that, the audio was really good.
Yeah, it was a ton of times. And like, these people are seeing all of this happen, and they still think it's because of his drinking problem.
Yeah, drinking, trauma, all those things. Yep.
More so the drinking. And she even at one point asked him if he was using again. And he was like, no, I'm not using any, I'm not using it. That's not what it is. And he was like, I think it's something else. But obviously she didn't want to hear that. And there was a point where the freaking door closes and he's walking towards her. His voice is a little bit changed, not completely as changed as it did later on, but his voice has changed. He's got the blackness on his eyes, and she still's like not acting like this might be a possession.
Possession, yeah. It's like, it's like those people, I guess. It's kind of like people in Evil, where they have this like blissful ignorance of like not really going down the Catholicism road of being like, oh, possession, this is demonic shit.
I think this is where I start to like lose it, because
well, before that, didn't she have that weird scene where he walked out downstairs and was naked?
Oh yeah, see,
that was
I forgot
super
about
creepy.
that.
I thought that was
because there were moments where he was just like standing at the door. She thought he was sleepwalking, and then so the second time it happens, he's like actually leaves the apartment and goes down the stairs. And when she does find him, he is saying like this weird stuff, which she recorded on her phone, like in Latin, and he is like outside naked, peeing on the floor.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Yeah.
And then the lights come back on, and he's upstairs.
Well, he was in front of her temporarily. Then the lights went out again, and then he ran upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like, I don't know. That was a really creepy scene. I like the way that scene played out.
I didn't really like that scene.
Yeah,
but
I liked it a lot actually. Because for her, it was more like, it obviously was creepy as hell. But it was also like that moment of like, damn, like my dad is like, is he on drugs again? Because this is some drug addict shit. Because like if you seen videos, people in the streets running around naked and shit like that. So like, she's thinking this motherfucker back on drugs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that's what they thought the whole time.
Yeah.
But even after that point, I feel like with the door closing thing, it reminded me of the Exorcist believer, because that's what happened in the same movie. Like the door closed, and for some reason they still didn't think anything was wrong.
Yep.
Like I don't know about y'all, but my doors don't slam in my house by themselves for no reason at all. Like to me, that's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's super weird. Yep.
But anyway, so like I was saying, I feel like at this point there was just way too much evidence that something was wrong for no one to be doing anything. Because even after that happened, he still went back to work. You know what I'm saying?
Like, yeah, he was still trying to work.
Because he had like cut himself up and everything. She's like, oh, let me clean your hands. I'm like, Blue Thing, you need to figure out why this happened.
Yeah, well, because she thought he was on drugs and drinking.
Well, that could have been very easy. Take a drug test. Give this man a drug test.
I mean, she also like 16, so I don't think she's thinking like, oh, I gotta get him a drug test. I think she just in caretaker mode, like, this is my dad. I'm just gonna try to take care of him. But I don't think she's thinking beyond the lines of like, oh, I gotta go get him a drug test. You know what I'm saying?
Well, anyways, if it was that much of a concern, she would have. But he tells her when that happened, like, I want you to just go back to school. He's like, I don't want you to get hurt or whatever, because he knows he doesn't really remember any of those things that happened. So he's assuming that he's like blacking out or whatever. But anyways, but yeah, back to the part where we were at, which is after like the big whatever that was.
Because they ended up having another moment too, where Chloe Bailey's character is at the house, and there's a big possession moment where like Tony, Russell Crowe's character, actually attacked Lee and Blake in the house, and that shit was crazy. Like, because he was going ham, he was throwing them around and shit. I was like, damn, like it's some hard hits. Like, it felt heavy and impactful. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And then they went to go to the priest guy to ask him, what could she do? Because she's like, I don't know what to do.
She didn't know who else to talk to. Yep.
And he tried to tell her that, it was probably just the movie bringing out the trauma. She played him the recording and he mentioned a demon. And it's the same demon that is in the script that they're doing in the movie.
Yep.
So he tried to play it off with her. It's like, oh, don't worry, I'll talk to him. We'll try to get him some help. And so he obviously was lying because after they left, he pulled out a book.
He knew that shit was serious.
Because they love to do this in horror movies. Got to bring out the book. Brought out the book and they found the demon that they were talking about.
Yep.
And he had like some. I don't know. Did anything happen with that? No. He just looked at the pages. That's all we saw him do.
Yep.
But the problem with me was he read that and he still didn't do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like he didn't ever approach him or anything like that because we see him like later on sitting at the table and it's like he is in his mind that there's an issue, but he never really does anything about it.
Yeah, it's like he's still waiting for confirmation, whatever. But then it took that final straw that I mentioned where Russell Crowe's character left the house after that big incident of attack.
Yeah, because he jumps out the window.
Yep. And then that's when it was like, oh, I know where he is. And that's when they were like, okay, we got to perform an exorcism. And Father Connor, who had the book and stuff, he was the one who's going to perform it.
Yeah, he's going to do the exorcism. And for some reason, Blake is also there. I didn't understand why she was there, but whatever.
Hey,
so Blake
that's
and
her
Lee,
boo. Lee her boo.
They kissed one time, maybe two times.
Well, obviously, they did more than that because she went to her house. You know what I'm saying? You didn't see that on screen.
I don't think anything happened because they didn't. They kissed after that, and the way that they kissed, it was like a first kiss.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just like an emotional thing.
Nah, it was a first kiss.
But one thing we didn't mention was before we get to that part, we jump back a little bit. We didn't mention that Sam Worthington's character's death because he was.
What? We haven't gotten there yet. We're just getting to the exorcism.
Yeah, he died well before the exorcism.
Joe. I thought we were talking about the father.
Yeah, no, sorry. Sam Worthington. So, because when Russell Crowe character started to have all those issues, the director of the film was like, "Oh, we got to replace him."
Oh yeah, so that's
what
they
went to Sam Worthington
about the director being an asshat because all he really cared about was getting the movie made.
That's all he wanted was getting the movie made and having a good movie. But they went to Joe, which is Sam Worthington's character, and was like, "Hey, Russell Crowe, he about to be out of this shit because obviously he back on the shit. So we need you to do the role." And so he takes it up reluctantly, and he goes and he practices it, and ends up getting killed by Russell Crowe's character. And actually, a real cool death scene that surprised me. Like I wasn't expecting.
But was it him? Because he was in the bed when this was happening. I thought maybe the demon thing presented itself to him.
No, I actually think it was him. I think I think they play with time a little bit. I don't think it was like when they showed him in the bed. I don't think that was like an instant thing. I'm sure there was some gaps in time there. But yeah, he killed him, and he had that shit. Glass went to his eye and shit. It was just a dope scene. I actually really liked that kill. But yeah, we can jump back to the exorcism now.
Yeah, the exorcism. There was like a cold room on the set, which was just a bedroom. So I assumed it was kind of like a place where they would be able to, it's like, oh, well, this room is now cold. Like you see in horror movies when people do their breath and you see like the breath in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Now Chloe, I keep calling her Chloe, Blake, said earlier in the movie like that room gave her like the creeps. And so anyway.
It's a creepy room. It looked creepy.
That's where his character or, Tony was. That's where they knew that he would be. So the priest is like gives them like a little cross thing on their heads, and he goes into the cold room, and then the lights go out, and then when they come back on, Blake is no longer with Lee, so now she goes into the cold room, and when she gets in there, she finds the book that Father Connor had on the floor. It moves. She follows where it is. She picks it up, and of course behind her is her dad, who's now fully possessed.
Yep, all the way.
When she turns around, she takes a moment to try to exorcise him herself.
Yeah, she's like, fuck it, I guess I gotta do this shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, he basically is like, oh, you don't believe? She's like, I do believe.
She pulls out the crucifix.
She does. She had the
puts that
crucifix.
shit on his
she
head,
puts it on
burns
his
him.
head. It does burn him.
And that
Now, when that
releases-
happens, because they're in some kind of trance, Father Connor and Blake, there's some kind of trance. They're not dead though. And so, when he does that, they kind of get released. And so, Father Connor is like, okay, I'm gonna have to like take the demon now. So he takes off his stuff and he basically tells Tony's demon thing, you can come inside of me. Like I won't fight back or anything. I'll just let you take over. And he had
kind of like the same thing happened in Exorcist in a way, you know, essentially.
And what's the other movie?
I don't know.
The Devil Made Me Do It. The Conjuring. When that dude told the little boy when he was come inside me.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, so that's what he did. And then when he did that, Russell Crowe's character, Tony, he kind of like try to do the thing, but it catches on fire. And then he uses the lines from the movie,
which is dope,
to try to exorcise the demon. And while he's doing that, I thought the most ridiculous part was when the girls were saying, "Pray with us" behind him. It was so weird. Silly the way they were doing it.
I didn't like that part.
It seemed like a parody movie. I thought I was watching a parody in that part.
I didn't think it was that bad.
It was bad.
I didn't think it was parody level, but yeah.
It was parody level.
Okay.
And so they think it works, but it didn't actually work.
Nope.
And so the part AJ likes is that Tony actually uses the cross and basically
stabs that dude on top of the head. I was like, whoa, I was not. That dude said,
yeah, and then he takes it out and stabs him some more.
Stabs him under the chin. And I was like, damn, I did not see that shit.
And so then
coming.
he ignites and he burns up.
Yep, and he kicked his ass off the stage. I was like, okay, that's cool. I like that part. That shit was dope. But yeah, he's flaming and stuff like that. And then it cuts to, him doing another confession. And then it has like some scenes of, Lee, and he's talking about how the relationship has gotten better.
And she's sending him a draft of her script.
Yeah. They like back on a good page. Like, man, we're the best we've ever been. He said, maybe this is grace,
But when he's done, we get one final shot of the set, which to me, I felt was dumb. That was not necessary.
Well, I think what they were trying to do was like loop it back to the opening scene of the movie, which I get because it's like that was the source really of them getting their relationship back, is them going through the trials and tribulations.
He don't like everything in this movie
of that set. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just feel like time is clearly passed. So why are we revisiting this fake house?
Well, they're not. We are as the viewers of this story, closing where we began, which is the set. But the set was the catalyst for allowing them to rebuild their relationship, because without that they wouldn't have gone through those trials to get back on the page they need to be on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the movie, y'all. And like I said in the non-spoiler section, I thought it was a good movie. Yeah, I'd watch it over a lot of the bullshit we watched this year. 100%.
I don't feel like that's you saying, oh, because this movie isn't as bad as Night Swim, that makes this a good movie. To me, that doesn't make sense. It's like it's either good or bad on its own, and to me, it's not that great.
I said that. I said it's a good movie.
Yeah, but you're saying comparing this to bad movies. Like, I mean, I can do that for anything. I could be like, well, I mean,
because
Red Velvet Cake is nasty because it's the worst cake or whatever, but chocolate cake is better because it's not as bad as Red Velvet Cake.
I'm picking those movies because, like, this movie isn't great. I said it's a good movie, not a great movie.
Right.
So obviously, this movie's not better than The First Omen, Disappear Completely. Those films that I really liked this year. It's not better than those. Those are great movies. I think this movie is good. You know what I'm saying? But it ain't great. You know what I'm saying? But I'm picking those movies because those are mainstream movies that are awful. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm saying that this is a good movie. And so it beats out a lot of those films. It ain't great. I'm admitting that part. It's not great.
Yeah.
But it's still decent enough to be in the league of these other films we rated at that like average level.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's just how I feel about it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you put it down there with Night Swim and stuff like that.
I mean, to me, I'm not thinking about those movies when I'm thinking
Those are
about
horror movies. These
what
are all
I'm saying
in the same
is
genre.
I'm watching this movie for what it is. I can easily say, oh, yes, this movie is better than Night Swim. So that makes it a better movie. To me, that doesn't make sense. Like it's on its own. It's not a good movie. I'm not going to compare it to Night Swim.
No, I'm asking you, would you rather watch this or Night Swim?
I would rather probably watch Night Swim.
Really? So that's literally what I'm asking you. So you think this movie is worse than Night Swim?
It's not that. I don't really know how to explain it to you, but I didn't like this movie to the degree of where I would watch this again. Like if you
trying to gauge.
If you said, baby, let's watch a movie, these are our two options. I'm going to pick Night Swim.
Yeah. So basically I'm trying to gauge.
I'm not saying the movie is better than Night Swim. I just don't like it.
I'm trying to gauge your rating of this movie, right? As a movie, I'm looking at we just literally did a ranking.
Well,
of
can you
our
just
top...
ask me how many stars would I give it then?
Okay, how many stars did you give it?
2.
Oh, what did you give Night Swim? I don't remember.
Probably 2.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I'd definitely give this movie at least 3. Yep.
Yeah. No.
At least 3. And because of the investment of the characters, I may go 3.5. But it's gonna be in that neighborhood. The
3.5 is not happening. No.
Yeah. Like I said, y'all. Like I keep it real. Like I genuinely absorb a movie.
Right.
I don't care what no one else says. I don't care about the reviews.
I don't either.
You know what I'm
I got the same exact view I had when we finished watching the movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I'm just letting people know.
Right.
Like that we give our honest opinions.
Yes. And in this case,
this one we
just
differ
don't
on
agree.
It. Yeah, we don't agree. That's fine. You have every right to dislike the movie, and I have every right to like it. But hey, look, y'all, that's our review in totality. We did the non-spoiler for y'all. We did the spoiler. That's how we're feeling about the Exorcism. Whose side are you on? You on Chrissy's side? You on my side? Did you like the film or did you dislike it? And like, if you disliked it, how bad do you think this movie is? Like, my worst movie this year is probably between Night Swim and The Strangers. But I think The Strangers might be honestly the worst. Do you put it down there with that? Like, if you'd rather watch The Strangers over this, then that means this movie is terrible in your book. You know what I'm saying? That's a good question for you, though.
I would watch this before.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, come on now. The Strangers was the first movie this year where like we could have left and I wouldn't have felt because normally, you know me, I like to finish movies. That movie was so bad to me that we could have left and I wouldn't have cared. That's how terrible that movie is. But yeah, y'all let us know down in the comments or over on Spotify or Apple. Let us know in there. How are you feeling about The Exorcism? Will you check it out? We wait for streaming. We always recommend to go check out a film for yourself. I think this is one that's going to definitely be mixed amongst a lot of different people, from critics to audiences. I'm curious to see how our viewers and listeners are feeling about The Exorcism. Hey, look, make sure y'all tune in to the channel, subscribe, y'all, because we got a watch along that we'll be doing coming up for Cabin in the Woods. We got our live news discussions that happens on Sunday, so make sure you check that out. It's live over on YouTube, y'all. You got to come have fun and interact with us. And, we talk about all the latest news from the past week, but we also take questions and stuff at the same time. But, hey, look, you made it this far. It's a long review. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We appreciate your support. Make sure you like, share, and, again, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.